Let's do this. The Cult of Hockey podcast by the faithful and for the faithful. I'm Bruce McCurdy of the Edmonton Journal's Cult of Hockey, and I'm here tonight with my colleague Kurt Leavins, pinch hitting for David Staples tonight. Welcome, Kurt.
Hello, old friend. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty well tonight. That was a pretty enjoyable and, relatively speaking, a low stress game to watch.
Yes, convincing.
Yeah. So Oilers came out on top in Las Vegas tonight by a score of 5-1. Which included them scoring four in the first period, and then basically the game turned into a bit of a chippy affair for the last 40 minutes, with less and less attention paid to hockey, as it was clear Edmonton was going to win to game two, and the question became who was going to get their pound of flesh. And there was some flesh exchanged on both sides, I would argue, but Edmonton certainly came away with the damage that mattered, and that was getting the victory that they absolutely had to have after losing 6-4 in game one. So, first, Kurt, an overview from you before we get into the specific good and bad.
Yeah, I think given the deep worry, I'll call it that, in oil country after game one, isn't erased, but I think eased considerably, because I think this is the hockey team that we've been watching for the last 2 months. And you could pick a better time than the playoffs to come up with one of your worst games in 2 months, but they bounced back in a big way. And I think a lot of the things that we saw are things that you can very easily predict will continue going forward. It's not like this game played out of its minds and over its head. I think this was very, very similar to what we're used to seeing from this club. And so I think very, very encouraging as we head home to the friendly crowd in game three.
Yeah, it was Edmonton in control for sure, and a more convincing win for them in game two than the Vegans got in game one. So we'll come home with a certainly well-earned split, and maybe a sense that the Oilers have a little bit the better team, but it's just one game or just two games. But you've got to, if you're going to get a split, that's the way to do it. Drop the first one and then clean up your mistakes and win convincingly in the second one. And that's precisely what happened tonight. Yeah. Kurt, we'll go with two good things, two bad things, two numbers as usual, but we'll have two good things each in this game, with it being a nice big Oilers win. That's also sort of a tradition around here anymore, but a lot easier to find two good things than even one bad thing out of this game for each of us, I suspect. So anyway, sure. I'm going to give you the first crack at a good thing.
I'll pick Leon Draisaitl. I had to laugh after 4 goals and not getting a star in game one. He scored twice tonight and got first star. How's that for a turn of events? Yeah. I thought he was just a powerhouse again tonight. 2 goals on the night. He's up to 13 for the playoffs. That ties the overall lead from the 2022 Stanley Cup playoffs, when both Evander Kane and Nate McKinnon had 13 goals each. And so Leon hits that mark in just 8 games. And you know what? He was not only dominant on special teams, he was dominant 5-on-5. Scoring chances 5-on-5 with him on the ice were 5-4, just 1 against. He was 56% the faceoff circle. He battled defensively. In particular, I have in my mind that one play early in the game in the defensive zone where he won a puck race by stretching full out. God knows what his what his wingspan is from toe to tip of the stick, but that's exactly what he did to deflect a puck out of the defensive zone into safety. Right. When you see the best performer in the 2023 Stanley Cup playoffs diving full out to tip a puck out of his own defensive zone, you know that he means business. And he's I would submit he's been the best player on the ice for both games in this series. The difference, of course, being tonight the Oilers came away with the win. But
He had a lot
Draisaitl
more
is
help
playing.
tonight.
Yeah, he sure did. There was way more than one or two players going tonight, but he continues to be dominant. And at this point, Bruce Cassidy has to be wondering, surely, what do we do to slow this guy down?
Yeah, well, he had 4 shots, 7 shot attempts, a couple of hits, a couple of takeaways, and 0 giveaways. And he was he even blocked a couple of shots in this game. Just so all positive stats along the board. 1 power play goal, 1 even strength goal, and just another towering performance from the German Gretzky, as he doesn't like to be called, or the Deutschland Dangler, as he also doesn't like to be called. But
well, he's sure starting to resemble an Oiler who used to wear number 11 in the postseason in terms of quality of performance. He doesn't have those rings on his fingers yet, but boy, when you look at the pure numbers, he is just ripping it up in the postseason.
Well, Kurt, he did. Recently he's turned up on a couple of per game type lists where he's now past 40 games. And if you set that as your bear, which is a little bit on the low side, but he just slides nicely in between Wayne Gretzky and Mario Lemieux on the per game points and goals. He just passed Gretzky on the per game goals streak. And I mean, obviously that'll change if he gets shut out a few times, but he got 2 more tonight. So that stat will be padded a little bit more. Yeah. And when you're talking about all-time legends of the game,
I was waiting for that one.
Those 2 guys. Well, how about this one? When his 11 goals in 7 games became the first NHLer to do that since Newsy Lalonde in 1919, 104 years ago. That was the year they actually didn't finish the Stanley Cup playoffs because of the outbreak of the Spanish flu and the death of Montreal Canadiens' Joe Hall in Seattle way back. And I think Seattle's last crack at the Stanley Cup, to be honest. But anyway, it was, I mean, you were talking about absolute legends of the game, and Newsy is one, for at least for those of us historical types that like to dig way back into the distant past. He was an early superstar in the game, Newsy Lalonde.
Well, when your name starts to get mentioned, not only with Gretzky and Lemieux, but with Newsy Lalonde and Cyclone Taylor.
Yeah.
You're doing something.
Yeah. Well, he's doing a lot, and it's good to see. And you're right about him stepping up his game for playoffs, and that's something I personally was counting on, but I'm still pleasantly surprised to what level he's playing at this moment in time. He's just on a higher plane. So my first good thing is almost how boring this game became. I have some scars, the Miracle on Manchester, that left a scar. The game 1 in Carolina in 2006 when Edmonton had a 3-0 lead and let it get away, right? The game in Anaheim when Anaheim scored 3 goals with the goalie pulled and then won it in double overtime, where they had a big lead and the game seemed to be in charge, and then somehow they let it get away on them. Those are the worst. The worst.
Yep.
Anyway, so tonight they soared to a 4-0 lead in the first period. And I'm just thinking, okay, just don't be doing anything dumb to let them sort of think they're still in the game. And you know what? Edmonton really didn't do very much dumb at all. And they didn't give them very much. And Stuart Skinner snuffed a chance here and a chance there. And I think they did hit a pipe at one point. And but the fact is that the 4-0 game became a 5-1 final and not a 5-4 final or a 7-6 final where you're hanging on for dear life at the end because both teams are going pedal to the metal. Oilers actually played smart, defensive hockey. They did a whole lot of chipping pucks out, chipping pucks in. I can't tell you how many pucks they dumped deep. I can't tell you how many times they did that long pass to the forward just over center that tipped it deep. It's kind of not exciting to watch, but you know what? When it's 4-0 for your team, Excitement's not necessarily what I even want. I just want to see that clock tick down, and they ticked it down just fine. They looked like a polished defensive team. There's a couple times they couldn't clear the zone, but I mean, you're going to get that in any game, really. I thought they,
Yep.
for large stretches, and really in the third when they benched their top players and went down the lineup, and Vegas closed the shot clock a little bit, but they didn't really ever make a game of it at any point.
No.
And between the Oilers' penalty kill coming through on their 3 kills tonight, that was really Vegas's chance to maybe make it a bit closer, was to score on one of those. The Oilers took care of business there, and really they took care of business for 60 minutes.
Yeah, and I thought in the back half of that game, if I can call it that, I can think of 3 players that wouldn't be considered stars on this team, who I thought played critical roles in that boring final 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Right? One was our rookie goaltender. I thought Stuart Skinner was solid, as you mentioned, a couple big saves, including that one breakaway.
Right.
I thought there was a second bar, but it turned out that the stick actually hit his stick, and it was the stick that hit the post on the second one.
Okay, right.
So I thought Skinner was really solid. Probably his best game of the playoffs. He wasn't spectacular, but didn't need to be.
Right.
I thought when you look at a guy who has struggled in these playoffs, Vinny Desharnais tonight, $1.59 on a penalty kill that was a perfect 3 for 3. And so that is a nice development from a player who I really thought that they might sit out tonight. So I'm happy for him. And I want to mention Derek Ryan, because you know what, he's not a guy who earned a star tonight, but I must have counted a dozen smart little plays that he made. Never put himself in a bad position. He was one of those guys, Bruce, that you were talking about, when he got the red line, that puck went into the corner. Like clockwork.
Over and over,
Yeah, and Derek Ryan has never been the most talented player, the fastest player, the biggest player, the strongest player, but boy, he's smart. And I admire how he uses his head out there, and I thought he was noticeable in a very good way in that uneventful denouement to this game that you so rightly point out.
No, he was very solid. That's a very nice choice by you, but he's not your second good thing. So who is?
My second good thing is Klim Kostin.
All right.
And you know what? Klim didn't have a perfect game. He was -1 a night and had a bit of an unfortunate giveaway up the wall, which did lead to the one Vegas goal against. But you know what? I think when you play in the bottom 6, what you're looking to do is make an impact on the game, an overall positive impact on the game, no matter what you put down on the score sheet. And I thought that's what Klim Kostin did tonight. Not only did he have 4 hits, not only did he have a scrap, not only did he tail a guy who was taking liberties at Connor McDavid right to the gate and was about to inform him that was a bad choice before 97 waved him off, which I thought was a pretty incredible sequence.
It was good on both parts.
Yeah, right? That's the right thing to trail that man.
We got this. Just leave him be.
Let's not give him a power play. Let's walk away.
Yeah.
But then with the game well out of reach, Klim Kostin out on the ice, blocks a shot, is seriously hobbled. There's no way for him to change, so he hangs in there on pretty much on one leg. Puck comes to the point, guy winds up. What does he do? He steps in front of it again.
Same foot.
Same foot. And I glanced up at my screen, and every player in the Oiler bench was on their feet, hammering their sticks against the board as he hobbled off. That's the kind of thing. You don't need to score a goal. You don't need to have an assist. When you're in the bottom 6 and you make contributions like that in the game, there's a pretty good chance your side's going to come out on top.
Yeah, well, it wasn't quite as epic a sequence as that time in the regular season when Vinny DeHarnay blocked 4 David Pasternak slap shots in a row.
Uh,
But I mean, that was one of the old timers. But this one was, I mean, he hung in there and he just got right back in that shooting lane. Boom, sure enough, same foot. And he was feeling it, but he went down the tunnel and he must have walked it off because he felt good enough to come back and get in the fight.
yeah, and I wondered because two guys helped him down the
Yeah,
tunnel. So that's when
yeah,
I
yeah.
saw it. I like, ooh,
Hope that's not a
that doesn't
busted
look
foot,
good.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I mean, and we'll see right tomorrow because
right.
sometimes after you take your skate off, things swell up and stuff
It's
like
hard to
that.
put it back on. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but
Hmm.
and and guys like him and Kane and Bukestad, when the game got silly and Vegas tried to clown around a little bit, this isn't the Oilers of 5 or 10 years ago. These guys are more than capable of standing up for themselves, as we saw tonight as well. And Kostin was a big part of that.
Right on. Yeah, yeah, he's an easy guy to root for, and seems like his teammates like him. He's got, he's far from a perfect player, but guess what? He's a $750,000 bottom six depth guy, and he brings gumption and he brings physicality, and he's got that wicked shot that comes out of the blue once in a while, and a little some rough edges to his game, but sometimes rough edges aren't all bad. So,
Yeah, and he did all of the above in 8 minutes and 56 seconds
yeah,
tonight.
yeah, that's
So
pretty typical. Like he's just generally around the 10-minute mark, and still doing all that. My second good thing is going to be the goal that I really think put this game away. This is a 3-0 tally scored on the penalty kill by Connor McDavid on a great shorthanded effort. And there's actually a couple of Oilers in the corner that made decent efforts in the first place that allowed Connor to get sort of isolated one-on-one against Shea Theodore, who is a very fine defenseman for the Golden Knights. But fine as he is, he was no match for Connor McDavid on this play, who first of all was able to outbattle Theodore, get a stick on the puck just inside the blue line and chip it out into the neutral zone. At that point, he engaged. Theodore wheeled around and engaged again with McDavid for the same puck, and out at center ice area. And again, McDavid won control of the puck, and then the third battle that he had with Theodore was a speed battle to the net, and Theodore had no chance there. McDavid went by him and was able to cut in front and just kind of chip a one-handed shot that caught Laurent Brossoit coming across the crease, expecting him to chip it high, which is McDavid's favorite play, really. But all he was able to do was slide it along the ice and just get it inside his skate. But it was a play where it was basically Connor McDavid 3, Shea Theodore 0, and sort of one extended puck battle that McDavid kept winning. And then a pretty nifty finish. And once that went in to make it 3-0, and that early Vegas power play was over, and this after Edmonton had scored 2 power play goals on their first 2, and then they scored a shorthanded goal on Vegas's first power play. Turn out the lights. Oilers were cruising then at 3-0. They got an even strength goal before the end of the first, and it was 4-0, and that was it got to 5-0. Like Vegas never made it even remotely close. So
yeah, that goal was equal parts beauty and brawn, right?
Yeah.
Keeps
He's
the
a
stick
strong
moving.
guy,
But
eh?
I love how he is willing and able to put his shoulder into a guy and
Yep.
beat him to the inside. That's
Yep.
tough. That's a power forwards game, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, and that wasn't exactly against Vegas's third pairing defenseman, which makes it all
No.
that much more impressive. I kind of had to smile. Louis DeBrusque on the telecast said, "Bet lucky goal," and I turned to my wife and I said, "I wonder if Louis wants a redo on that." once he sees the replay again. That was
Well, Louis is going, he's on national broadcast, and he's going the extra mile to make it appear that he's not a homer. But there are times when I sort of say, come on, Louis,
yeah.
take our side on one of these penalty calls or video review calls just once, or, say, yeah, McDavid made a pretty good play there,
Yeah, exactly.
He really did. But I thought Connor skated better tonight than we've seen in a couple weeks. And I think he, this downtime, like they had 3 days off between games 4 and 5, or between games 5 and 6, pardon me, and 3 games off between series, 3 days off, and then 2 days off between games 1 and 2. And I thought his skating was better in game 1 and better still in game 2, and starting to look like, he can lose people with his stops and starts and crossovers and stuff, which was really kind of not a dominant thing for him in the back half of the LA series. So
yeah, you know what, I think
Connor
was one of the few players who just looked a quarter turn off, in the last couple of games, and I would include, Hyman and Kane, I think in that same sentence. And all 3 guys, I thought, looked way closer to their usual. So
Hyman had a terrific game tonight. He's going to get a high grade. 3 assists, led the team with 5 shots on net. Kane co-led the team with 5 shots on net.
And was a general menace.
+1 and 24 minutes in penalties to also lead the team. And just was in everybody's face, including that lady with the black and shiny dress that was giving him the double bird from the stands on row 1. And
floating her kiss. I saw a tweet from someone, hang that in the Louvre.
Anyway, those 2 guys were big, and there was lots of good performances. But let's briefly turn to what we saw as bad things tonight, or at least middling things that could have been better. And again, your lead.
Yeah, it was a bit tough to pick one. I think you kind of went through the same process because it really was a complete effort from this game. I'll pick Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, but with an asterisk. On one hand, Nugent-Hopkins put up a couple assists, and I thought was on special teams, I thought he was effective. And probably earned his pay from that standpoint. But what is my bad thing is he still looks far from right. And it really shows up 5-on-5. Tonight, 5-on-5, his CF was 2 and 10, 16%, which is as low as I recall seeing this year. Scoring chances for or against were 1 to 5 with him on the ice, and high danger 0-2 with him on the ice. Now, so much went right tonight that it isn't a problem, and his contributions on special teams are notable. But in a long playoff run, you're going to need your third best player to play way better than he has played so far these playoffs. I don't know if he's hurt. I don't know if he's sick, but he's not the Nuge that we watched the entire regular season. And knowing the quality of the person, I'm absolutely positively guaranteeing that he's giving us everything he's got. But that is what leads me to think the guy must be down a court because something's not right.
Yeah, well, he's I noticed his special teams play as you did, and I'll be grading him favorably for that. But he's far from the full guy that we had. He was winning so many puck battles this year, and I thought, he was looking stronger, and he was looking more confident that he would just go in there and come away with the puck against whoever. And seen less of that in the playoffs, and wonder if there's a physical reason or malady of some sort behind it. But
and I do wonder if it's a lower body injury or something like that, Bruce, because the other thing we're not seeing, which is typical Nugent Hopkins, is those backtracks and those strips of pucks. He's usually great in the neutral zone, and we're not seeing that right now. And it's just atypical of him.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's totally fair. Yeah. Bad things. I'm so struggling for bad things. I'm not going to complain about the refs, which I've been known to do on rare occasion. I'm not going to. I got no real issues with the Oilers, even when they, in the third period, they backed off a bit and gave up a little bit, but not very much. And I mean, the shots got closer, but not that many dangerous ones. I guess I'm kind of forced to pick the one play that cost a shutout, and even there, it was just very small things. It was a failed clearance along the boards by Kostin, and then there was a pass from the slot where McDavid got a piece of the pass and deflected it up in the air. So it's not like he got badly beat. He made a play that's going to win it for you, usually. And then it came up towards Matthias Ekholm, and he tried to reach up with his glove rather than engage the stick of the goal scorer, who was Ivan Barbashev. With his third goal of the series, and Barbashev was able to backhand whack the puck right out of the air, right in front of Ekholm's glove, just under the crossbar height, and whack it into the net. So, I mean, they made a play. It's hard to say anybody really screwed up on that play, but the bad thing was that Skinner lost his shutout. So I'll go with that thin thing. I mean, if it was 1-0 at the time and it sent the game to overtime, I'd be a lot more upset about losing that shutout. But in the playoffs, I don't care about shutouts. You just want to win games.
Yeah. And the goal was properly allowed. I think they looked at it in case it was a high stick, but I think really what it was to take a baseball analogy, what that was a liner into the gap. Right.
Belt high fastball, and he drilled it into the gap. Indeed, that's a good way to put it. And so that's my puny little bad thing. I'm in a pretty good mood, so I'm not going to rip anyone.
No, don't blame you.
Yeah. So what have we got left? Numbers. One number each. Again, you go first, Kurt.
My number is 7. The last 7 times the Edmonton Oilers have lost a game, they have won the next game. They are 7-0 coming back from losses. And the score in those 7 games, bounce back games, I guess I could call them, on average 4.7 to 2.6. And the power play is at 45%.
That's pretty convincing.
Yeah, right. So it's it's a resiliency that we have seen from the team, maybe not all, but for much of this year. And I have to say, while a lot of people were really wringing their hands pretty vigorously over that loss in game 1, I wasn't losing sleep over it. I wasn't happy with the performance, but I just knew that A, that's not typical of them, and B, I could recall a dozen times this year when they bounced back strong from subpar or poorer performances. And so I kind of expected something like that tonight. I won't say I predicted the dominant performance that we witnessed, especially over the first 20 minutes. But when you've followed up your last 7 losses with 7 wins in convincing fashion, it means that you're made up of pretty good stuff, and you have self-belief that you can bounce back.
Yeah, of course, the big example of that was Game 4 in Los Angeles, where they lost Game 3 in a controversial fashion in overtime, and then Game 4 they fell way behind early, and they just fought their way back and found a way to win that game also in overtime. That was the biggest test. But yeah, I've always liked a team that can end losing streaks at 1.
Yep.
That's the way to do it, and these Oilers have been pretty consistent at that. And many times, including tonight, they've done it in very convincing style. So
sometimes with clubs in that situation, there's grease on the rope. You're trying to climb up, but as fast as you move your hands, you're still sliding down the rope.
Right.
whereas these guys seem to have a pretty good grip on things.
Yeah, none of this Blue Jays 5-game winning streak followed immediately by a 5-game losing streak, where you're going nowhere and you're just banging your head against the wall because one week it looks like your team can beat the world, and the next week,
It must be May. We both have baseball analogies.
Yes, it's baseball season for sure, but it's still hockey season. I was going to go with 124 minutes and penalties, which was an awful big number of penalties from this game, but I'm going to stick to something a little more Oilers positive, and that is the power play, which scored 3 times tonight. The power play scored 3 times tonight, and their playoffs percentage success went down. They went 3 for 6, 50%, and that lowered their playoff success rate from 58 to a mere 56% now, with 14 goals on 25 chances in the playoffs. It's just unbelievable. They played 8 games, and they've got 14 power play goals, and they're basically averaging 3 chances per game. Tonight they got 6. They got chances early, and they converted early, and then they got a chance because the Vegas coach foolishly challenged a goalie interference that obviously,
terrible challenge.
Yeah, I would have been shocked if they'd overruled that game. I was surprised a few times this year, but this seemed pretty clear. The Vegas defenseman Nicholas Haig had pushed Zach Hyman into the crease, but at that point it was 4-0, and the coach is probably going, if it's 4-0, we're not coming back, so we might as well take a wild swing at it and hope that the NHL referees invoke the Zach Hyman rule and disallow another goal, but not this time. And Zach actually was innocent this time. I mean, some of those goals should have been disallowed. I think not quite all of them. There was 7 during the season, but this one was a clean goal. And so they got their chances, and they converted even the last one in the game, which, they were going for a record. They could have put their big guys out there, but they put their second unit out, and then they put their third unit out.
Third unit, yeah.
And Dave and Draisaitl just sat comfortably on the bench having a nice little chat as the game wound down. And even though they had 2 goals each, I mean, you care about as much about hat tricks as you do about shutouts. Just win the game, come out of it in one piece. Don't put those guys out there to tempt somebody to take a big run at them in the last minute, and they didn't. So that's my number for this game. And one other observation to do with Jay Woodcroft and his personnel management. And this could have maybe come under my first good thing of how the Oilers controlled the game down the stretch. They had the big 2 going together for well into the second period, and then all of a sudden I'm noticing, hey, there's Draisaitl with Nugent Hopkins and Yamamoto, and then a few shifts later, and hey, there's Draisaitl with Nugent Hopkins and Yamamoto, and there's McDavid with Kane and Hyman, and you've got 2 good lines of forwards and 2 solid centers. Whereas when they team up the big 2, the second line, I think, it's a little more vulnerable. So moving Leon back down to the second line with the lead was just conservative but smart coaching.
Well, you'll remember in the podcast that the 3 of us did before this series started, I picked the Oilers' strength down the middle as one of the reasons why I thought they would win the series. Right. And I can't say I've been 100% with Jay Woodcroft for not playing McDavid and Draisaitl on separate lines, because I worried a little bit that he was playing away from a strength that we had over Vegas.
Right.
But as you rightly point out, when they took the lead tonight, then he did go to that option. And I think when you line up McDavid, Draisaitl, Bukestad, and McLeod, I think that's a tough foursome to go up against for any team. And surely the club was successful in shutting it down the rest of the way.
Yeah, well, I wrote a post earlier this week, and I pointed out that they, since McDavid took a couple of nasty hits in Game 3 and didn't appear to be skating at his best, they immediately put Draisaitl with him next game, kind of like they combined him last year after Draisaitl hurt his ankle.
Yeah,
and that kind of sheltered McDavid a little bit, but the price they paid for that was that Nuge, who'd been doing just fine as a complementary player with either McDavid or Draisaitl. Suddenly he was the odd man out trying to, anchor a line, and that line was getting caved.
Yep.
And so part of it was, was just it's just a roll of the dice. You put your two strong ones here and then leave yourself a little bit vulnerable, because all these playoff teams have at least two good lines.
Yep.
And you mentioned Hyman and Kane as not having been playing all that great either, and so that second line has been in pretty deep. But once they switched that up tonight, and as I say, McDavid looked enough stronger that he was able to handle it no problem. And then the third, they just basically went to bottom sixers and depth players and Kane and the bigger, stronger, tougher guys that weren't going to come out on the short end of the physicality, and that worked fine. There's nobody going to beat up the Edmonton Oilers this year, Kurt.
No, for sure. And to your point on setters, I know that Bukestad played 15-51 tonight, and McLeod played 17-25.
Yeah, McLeod led the way at even strength for centers, and he had a pretty good game. Couple of moments I kind of raised an eyebrow, but 3 shots, 4 hits, and he was pretty engaged and
good on the PK.
So if he's your 4C,
right,
you're in pretty good shape.
Yeah, agreed. And I thought he skated particularly well.
Yeah.
I agree. He wasn't always perfect with his decisions, but he had his wheels going.
Right on. All right, Kurt. Well, I think that wraps up, unless you had any final observations heading home for games 3 and 4.
No, I think there is an advantage, even though lots of people like to poo-poo home ice advantage. I think having last change is an advantage. I think the Oilers crowd is an advantage. And while I know there's lots of people who don't think momentum transfers from game to game in the playoffs, and I think there's a modicum of truth in that. I think the Oilers will feel confident in the effort that they put forward in game 2. And when you have a team filled with offensively gifted players like the Oilers, if they feel confident, I think the opposition is concerned.
Yep. Vegas will be Bruce Cassidy and company will be staying up late the next today and tomorrow trying to figure out some counter strategy, because they came out second best tonight and it wasn't particularly close.
Yeah, they'll be giving the old VCR a workout.
Right on. All right. Well, we'll look forward to game 3 and 4 in the coming days. I'm going to let you get back to doing what you were doing, and thanks for taking a little bit of time out to fill in for David tonight. He's at his dad's celebration of life, so we wish David and his family well during well, it's a tough time, although I guess enough time has passed that they're actually able to celebrate the full entirety of his life as opposed to the end of it, which tends to loom the largest right at the right away. So anyways, we'll be back with our regular cast and crew probably on Monday night, and I think you have the grades on Monday night, so we'll handle it that way. But in the meantime, thank you very much, Kurt, for stepping up tonight.
You bet. No problem. And my best thoughts to our teammate David, and looking forward to reading your, as always, expert game grades when they come out later this evening.
I haven't even written a word yet. I'm a slow writer, but I like to wait till the game is over before I start to write about it. So I have it's an actual ending point to the various threads of describing the action. I got lots of notes, but I still got to write. So it'll be a bit later, folks, but that's the price you pay for my particular way of doing it. And you guys are you guys are newsmen. I'm not. I'm a dilettante. I just got no journalism degrees or any of that kind of stuff. But
I'd say you do a pretty good impression of a journalist.
Just doing my thing, Kurt. Anyway, tonight I get to write about a win, and it's not freaking midnight because this was a 5 o'clock start, not an 8 o'clock or 8:20 start, and it didn't go into overtime, so we're all good. Anyway,
all right.
So with that, I will thank you, Kurt, and thanks to the listeners for listening. And in the meantime, this has been another edition of the Cult of Hockey podcast.